Alrighty, so welcome to week 3 in CIT 93 Intro to Coding with JavaScript. I think it's just, and actually, I think it's just JavaScript on the course. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. As we enter week 3, I have gotten to know several of you, both in person and on Zoom, which is awesome. And I'm just going to reiterate something that I believe has been sent out to you about the tutor schedule. So right now, Brianna's schedule is listed at the very top of the course. And this is her intro. This is a link to her sessions. This is when she's available online and then in person for this class. This may be something that changes in the future, but just keep an eye on this and I'll let you know once if things do change. But please either you hear me saying this, so you're going to hear me say it again right now. Reach out for help. The sooner, the better. Right? And the other thing is check your code. Make sure you're using DevTools. We're going to use DevTools again today. Now, when I say DevTools, I'm talking about Chrome's built-in DevTools. Now, if you're going to use another browser, because I don't like to tell people which browser to use, but if you are, just know how to do whatever I'm showing in Chrome DevTools in that browser. Because when you come in for technical interview, that will be one of the things that I'll have you demonstrate to me is your ability to walk through code in DevTools. Okay, and also consider if you're not already joining Discord. I expect this Discord to become even more interactive. I not expect it, I hope it does. The nice thing about being on there, and I'll just reiterate something I said, I believe, in week 2 about the idea of it's a community, right? So this is a community out there and the guidelines about how to interact, but just consider doing it. And the feedback that I saw you all focus on for week 2 was great because it's definitely in line with what I've been saying, which is work ahead. And now I'm actually in Thursday of week 2. Okay, so I've seen a bit of your work. I've seen some of you interact with the checkpoints, and that is a work in progress that I wrote the prompts for that, and it's been very interesting to see the interactions with that. I will say again, and I will reiterate the idea of taking it more than once if you're struggling, because it's just good practice to know how to code things. Really try to do it from your experience of coding through the code alongs, because the idea is to see how well you're translating that skill. That's why taking it multiple times can be helpful. Okay, so let's move into week 3. We're actually going to have for 3.1, which I will talk about at the end. Actually, now we're going to actually start developing the carbon footprint. Last week, we had, some basic ideas of variables and operators and basic interactions in the page. The DOM loading, the defer was a really important one. Right, learning how to output things to the page, having an event listener, just really good, in my opinion, of course, introduction last week. So for this week, for attendance, okay, we're going to do something because I've been really thinking about how we're going to do this week. And just to let you know, the videos you watch during the checkpoints are actually videos I recorded over the summer. And today, as I went through and looked at them, right, I'm trying to remain as consistent with those and trying not to change too many things, but just note those were recorded before now. I don't know why that would make a difference, but here's what we're going to do. So we're actually going to get some starter code for our carbon footprint. Now, why do I do the carbon footprint? Well, it's something I'm actually pretty interested in for myself, and I just think it lends itself well because we're creating a form that gets user input, calculates a particular value, and outputs that to the screen, but does it in a way that's pretty interactive. And so we're going to hit all the really important parts of JavaScript in creating this carbon footprint that we will then use as a model to actually help you start creating your own app, and I'll call it a decision app. Okay, so this is where we're heading, and of course, halfway through, you'll get the technical interview, which is why learning to authentically code so that you can come in and have that code interview experience. Having said all that, okay, what we're going to do here is I've given you a link to the week 3.1 instruction because we're going to need, I just want to give it, actually, I do need to give it to you. Let me go in and show you why. Because in here, and I need to change the link, and I'll do that before you get here. Actually, I needed to give you a link. Now, this has been a little bit of for some people, I'm not giving you the history, right? If you were submitting your code alongs, you give me the history link, right? This would look like this. I've only done one commit. So that's where, just to understand, you're giving me your commit history. What I'm giving you here is actually a link to the markdown for the instruction for 3.1 and 3 other files that you've already seen, but now are going to have a lot more content in them, except for the JS. And if you customize your HTML and CSS, start with the standards that I'm going to give you here, and then we'll talk about as we move forward in future attendance items, ways to help you, work on that. And I think in week 5, we start your development, and that will be what you'll play with is your HTML and CSS. But for today, we're just going to learn about them, okay? So in here, there's 3 files. You're going to need these 3 files in your local private repo, okay? And I'll show you there's multiple ways you could do this. I mean, one thing I could do is right-click. I'm probably not going to recommend this. I'm sitting here looking at it because I could open it in a new tab. I could copy it. That's not what I want to do. So I'm sure there's a download somewhere. Like, let's click into it. Yeah, so here's the code. Can't remember it. I'm sure it gives you, yeah, here it is. So I could download the raw file, but I think it's just good to actually grab the code and actually have the experience of going into your VS Code, whether that be CodeSpace or local, to actually get just more experience. And when I say get, I mean G-E-T, not G-I-T, have more experience for creating files and folders. So let me move over and drop my video just for a minute, for a little while. Okay, so I'm going to actually, let's see, let me see. Oh, I am. Okay, so here's my environment that I have, and I have Rios D private for Rios demo. We're in week 3, right? I'm going to create those base files. And notice what I did here. I did a little quick, so I'll slow down. So when I'm in here, because I've already created the folder, so I should have shown you that. But in here, you'd click on the private, and then you would hit the folder, and then W3. And yes, I do care that they're all lowercase, no space. Okay. So in here, I'm going to create an app.js. And notice how already I'm getting the version control coloring, which is nice. And then I'm going to get this style.css. Now I'm not getting it. I'm actually just creating the base files and the index.html. Okay, so now I have those base documents. Okay, so now I would just go over here. And if you have a better way, as long as they get there. So in here, this shouldn't be a surprise. This is just that starting one. Okay. I'm going to go back to the style. Now this one's quite a bit more involved, and notice what I did is I went through and had Gen AI document each line. Not because you have to understand each line, but there may be times that you want to. Okay, so style.css. Good. These are comments on the CSF file. Okay, these are rules and selectors. You'll learn something and I think I saw somebody make a comment on week 1 about knowing more about what happens there. And I saw one of the students who had taken CIT93FA25 say, hey, take that class. I guess thank you for the promotion. It's a class that does teach you a lot more about these things. So I'm going to come into my index. Oh, I put that in the wrong file. My bad. Okay, sorry. I put the JavaScript in the index file. Not a good idea. Okay, so let me go copy that easy one-liner here. All right, okay. So the experience of files and folders, good. Now the next thing I'm going to do before I do a commit, okay, and actually I'm going to do this, okay, and I want you to do the same. I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to comment out, command / the CSS file, okay? and I'll show you why in a minute. And I'm going to start up my live server. Now my live server then is going to start and only output the HTML to start with, okay? So there's a couple things we can see just besides some content, right? We can open up our DevTools here. And this might be a good thing before you jump into what we're going to do today, is just get an idea. Like we have the body of the HTML, we have the main, which is a container. We use these as semantic markups. A lot of people still unfortunately use divs, but hopefully we see a moving away from those. H1 for a header, right? And then we have a form. This will be the all-important form here. And you recognize forms because everybody's filled out a form at some point in their life, right? And so there's some input here. There's a field set. Okay, and don't worry if you haven't had a prior experience, this would not make sense. But we're just kind of showing, and you can go to a specific thing, right-click, inspect, and where this is navigating here is on the elements. Okay, so you can see that that is a radio button. How do I know that? Well, if I look up, because that's a label. Okay, that. Right there, that is a label. And if I drop that down, right, because notice how these little carrots work, right, to where if you drop that down, input type, okay, value, so it's a radio button. In that case, it's a type of input. And we'll be working with a lot of this stuff, right? But again, this is not an HTML and CSS class, so we're just going to spend some time today getting to know it. So first, look at it this way, okay, just to see the HTML. So in this case, what it's rendering is just the HTML. Now down here in the bottom, there's a script for the live server. Don't worry about that. Here's the end of main. Here's the end of the form, right, as well. Okay, so this is just the HTML, right? Here it is. And I can also use my VS Code to navigate through here, right? I can come up to these places in the code, and notice how I have little carrots here too. I could roll up and see that everything is in a container called main. If I rolled up form, I could see everything from 15 to 83 is my form, all that code. And then I could see there's a section called results. Okay, if I rolled up that, I could see how many lines that is, just kind of look between. And then I can see that main, again, is wrapped all that code up, but there's a lot more in here. Okay, so I just want to give you a little navigation just to start looking at things, because part of what I'm going to have you do for this assignment is actually spend a little time getting to know this. And I think getting to know it in DevTools or whatever you're using and VS Code is a good idea. First, just the HTML, okay? Just looking around. It's okay, you don't have to know it. Sometimes just looking at things start to go, why do I have this? What's this data type number, right? I got a min, a value, a placeholder. Where could I find that? Where's the number of people in the household? Okay, so spend a little time there, and then come back over here, and what I'm doing here is command /, and I'm going to undo that comment that comments that line out. And so now, when I go back to my DevTools, it's going to look very different, because now we've applied CSS, right? So HTML is a structure, CSS is our design. It's like, I think I've heard the analogy recently, right? The bones versus like the bones of the body, right? And then that's the HTML, and then our body skin, our makeup of how our eyes look, our hair color, all those different things is a CSS. That's the equivalent. There's other analogies you could make here. But now notice in DevTools, and I should have pointed this out, and we could go back and look at it, but notice now when I click on, let's say, main, I can see all, and this is styles, right? So as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to go back. I'm going to do that again. And now, if I hit on main, these are what we call the browser, just the default styles inside the browser, okay? Because the browser itself has some styles, but you can see that you can see what it is, but you can also see once we, implement our style sheet by uncommenting it here, you can see much more and start to understand at a higher level, it's okay, how this CSS, in this case, we can come here and look, okay, so I have a media query. A media query is something that makes the page respond to a specific breakpoint, and that's just like responsive. When you look at something on a mobile phone versus a desktop, it looks different, and that's because we use media queries to make it respond. And actually, the body is using something called Flexbox. Again, don't worry if you don't know it. You can see the styles associated with that. And then as I go back to main, I'm like, okay, at the container level, I have this, right? It's inherited from the body. And that goes to the idea of a cascade, right? A cascading style sheet. So we can apply, so in this case, the main container inherits all these that are not grayed out, okay? So the line height, the color, and the font family is all actually being styled from the body the body element or the body selector here, right? The rule, and then we can see where that one's located. Now, I know for those of you that are new, this is going to be like, what is Rio talking about? Right? So now let's do this. Okay, so now that I've shown you that, let's actually go ahead and do our commit here, right? Because this is what you'll get part of your points for, is first just setting this up, okay? So I'm going to do it too. I'm going to open an integrated terminal. I'm going to do git status. I can see right now here that and I'm in W3. Now, if I backed up one directory and I did git status there, actually would get that whole output that, hey, we have untracked files, and that's what this U means. And this is a little review. Never hurts to get some review, okay? So I could either do it from here, and if I had other files and other folders, and I'm doing my git add from here, then it would grab anything at the folder I'm at. So maybe I go back into W3. Oh, W3. Okay, I'm going to do a clear. I'm going to do a git add. I did a git status, git add. So now we're archived. Okay, I'm going to do a git commit -m, set up week 3 done, right? And then I'm going to do a git push. Sweet. Okay, so that part of it, again, you can, spend a little time here. So now what you've done is we've walked you through, right, this part of it, and I will fix that link. It will actually go where I said before, and actually that'll be for 3.1. So now, after seeing the files shown in the video, right, open your index file, which is basically here, right, our index file. This is what I was showing you how to do in there, right, in Chrome. Right-click Inspect. Spend 5 to 10 minutes exploring the elements, and then click on the different HTML, the header, the image, main, right? And look at the styles and watch the styles on the right side change, and then observe the connection between those two. Matter of fact, one thing you can do as well, you could go over here and you could say padding, and you could turn padding off, and you can see what happens on the page when you turn it off. So that shows you where the padding is applied. Okay, you could look at the width. Not really in here, because you have to understand the larger context of that. Let's see, max. Now, some of these may not show you because of the resolution that you have turned on. Like I could do font family, and that would take off that, so I'd see where that's done. Okay, so spend some time there. All right, and just make, observe connections. And then in your discussion, right, and so in your reply, we're going to do a couple things. So first, and this is not intended to make anybody better than anybody else. We're all starting at a different level. That's just the nature of life. It's okay. You're here to learn. We're here to help you learn. And, this is where we all start. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 is where I'm completely new to this, and 10's I'm very comfortable. What's your current understanding of HTML and CSS? And give us a little explanation, okay? So your 40 points here 40 points comes from doing the setup, doing the commit, spending some time, and then giving us this. Now, in this case, I'm actually asking for a heading, right? So in your reply, and you'll see me do this, I'll say, right, and you can make up your own heading text. But what you do here, and by the way, you can actually do this in HTML, which is kind of cool. Right now, it's a paragraph, right? So what would we do to make it an H3? Or in this case, I think I wanted an H4. Well, yeah, we could use what's called the WYSIWYG. easy. But if we drop down, oh my God, look, we just have to put H3 at the beginning, H3 with the ending element tag at the end. Okay. All right. So we do that. Come back here. Right, so that's your first part, okay? So in here, right, and you can, until you're ready, you can wait to put all this in at once, or you can come back and edit it as well. So now what we're going to do, now we're going to learn more about what is happening in the HTML and the CSS. And the thing about this is we're all starting at different levels, right? And it's okay. So now we're going to use generative AI. Now you can use whichever Gen AI you like. I don't care. Frankly, it's kind of nice to have a variety of people using a variety of these tools. So your goal is to craft 4 insightful prompts, 2 focused on the HTML and 2 focused on the CSS to clarify things you're curious about. And it could be basic things, it could be more involved things, it's all good, okay? Now, what you're going to do then is what you'll do is craft some prompts, but I'm going to give you a starting point. Okay, so in this case, here's the starting point. And by the way, you could also, because I just did this very, very quickly. I am a beginner learning HTML and CSS based on the code provided, which you will provide the prompt, these two, all the HTML and all the CSS, please answer my question. And actually, it should be questions. Okay, so in this case, you could also change this prompt. I'm just giving you a simple one. Okay, so my current tool, as you've probably heard me say, right? So I would say, oh, wrong one. I would come back here to here, and I would copy this, right? Actually, I'd probably copy this first. I'd come in here, copy that. I'd hit Control Enter. I wouldn't hit Enter yet. Okay, and then I would grab all the HTML, copy it. Okay, so I'd say HTML. I'd hit, and I think Enter. I'm using Control Enter, but I think just Enter. Oh, actually, yeah, that's a good point. Just Enter depending on the chat that you're looking at, and actually, I would have it stop right there, and I'd come back over here, right, and I would edit it because, like, no, I haven't given you all that I want. Okay, so that's all the HTML, right? So then I would come back here, and I would pick up that other here. Right, and then here's the CSS, just in the note to the LLM, what you provided. Now, by the way, it knows, but it's just that thing of giving more context. Okay, so now I'm going to do that, and I'm using Shift Enter here to give me a new line without hitting Enter. Okay, cool, right? And one thing I'd probably add to this is I would come up to my prompt, and I would say, okay, based on the code provided below, please answer my questions. And I would modify this already, right? I would say, review the code. You don't have to. I'm just showing you kind of how I work with AI, but it's pretty simple. Review the code and let me know when you are ready to start answering my questions. Okay? So then what will happen is, based on whichever one you're using, again, do not pay right now unless you're already paying and that's something you want to do. The idea here is that there are many of these out there. I may have already told you I run them locally as well, right? Should get rid of that. I'm not sure what happened there. Of course. Oh, actually, I just got to get rid of all that content. That's why. It's waiting for the box. Okay, it's a well-structured, nice... Oh, thanks. I like it when you compliment us on the work we've done. It's a well-structured, nicely styled user interface for the carbon footprint. I'm ready for questions. Okay, so then you start asking questions, right? So that's the idea. And then you come up and again, spend a little time here because the idea here was to spend a little time just to get a brief overview. And now, what do you want to know? what do you want to understand? Okay, so develop two specific questions, and we could call these prompts really, about HTML, and two about CSS. Strive for uniqueness, right? Briefly scan. So if you're the first person to scan the post, you don't have to scan anybody else's, but it is really good, and you'll have to do replies. So read, because this is where you can, other students' prompts can help you. Because what I'm going to say is you're going to share two specific prompts for HTML and two specific prompts, again, questions, prompts about CSS. Okay, so spend a little time here, figure out which really helped you understand, right? And then the four completed prompts, so two from here, you created, right? Do not share the AI's output because we can look at your post, see your prompt questions, and we can use them in whatever one we're using, okay? But then, so provide the four that you used, right? So in this case, I'm going to come down here. So this would be after this. Now my prompts, okay? And I would make this. Now we'll notice when I hit enter here, it moves. Notice here, this changes, right? So this is a paragraph. So now again, I should do this in HTML, but okay. I'm going to try to do it quickly. So I'm going to go here. H4, my prompts, right? And you can even use, like there's some nice tools here, right? There's some bullet points, right? Under here, you could go and use some numbering, right? You could write some HTML. Oh, why is that? That's 3, my bad. That should have been 4, okay? So here, you will write, provide the 4 that you found, okay? Sorry, hold on, let's slow down, right? Now, briefly explain, and by the way, you could do definitely more prompting, just come up with 2 for HTML and 2 for CSS, and in your reply, provide them all. Briefly explain which of the prompts were most helpful for your understanding and why. And state whether your understanding score from part 1 that we did up here, right, has increased after completing this exercise, and then tell us which AI tool you used and why, okay? So that is worth 40 points, having all those pieces. And then at the end, right, find a classmate's post that doesn't have a reply yet. I like the idea of applying, because sometimes I know students will only reply to the top one. So try to spread that nice reply around. Make us a sensible reply. There's some ideas. You could suggest a follow-up question they could ask, explain how their prompt helped you understand something new, or offered a helpful observation. Okay, so that's what you will do, and 20 points for your 1 required reply, but I would do 2. I'd definitely spend some time looking at some of the questions because it may help you dive even deeper. Okay, so once you finish that, then you will be on to your first, and I will go ahead and release these 2 things today, Thursday before week, and then my goal will be to have the checkpoint for this one done because I'm trying to get more ahead of the due date because I messed up. I'm not gonna lie, week 1 and 2 of the semester have been really a big challenge, which I'm always up for, but I should have had more content before the start of the semester. So I gave a little more time here. And I want to talk about these AI reviews, but this week we needed to focus on getting this done and having you get a basic understanding of the HTML and CSS. All right, I'll talk to you later.